Hello and welcome. My name is Cherish Hart, and I'm the VP of Community Impact here at the American Heart Association in Washington. It's a beautiful day in the Pacific Northwest, and it's my pleasure to welcome all of you guests from across Washington and Oregon to the American Heart Association's community conversation about reducing stress. Great topic for all of us, I'm sure. And today's community conversation is sponsored by Providence Health Plan, and we're so excited to have all of you joining us as well as them. But before we start, just a few notes for our audience. You'll notice a Q&A icon down on your menu, and that's a great place to put your questions anytime throughout the conversation. So you can drop those questions in there. And if we don't cover it, if we run out of time, we'll follow up in an email as well. You can also feel free to comment, stay engaged in the chat feature as well. But you don't have to worry about your camera or coming mute and unmute, because you're just going to relax and engage in those ways throughout today. So I have a couple of great panelists with us today that I would like to introduce, and we're going to be having a conversation about this topic of stress. The first is Dr. Laurel Soot, and she's a board-certified general surgeon currently serving as the Vice President of Medical Management for Healthcare Services at Providence Health Plan, where she has advanced the medical policy program by providing her clinical expertise, aiding the development of policies that support consistent, equitable, and evidence-based decision-making, and chairing the Medical Policy Committee. She also represents PHP as a member of the Oregon Health Leadership Council Evidence-Based Best Practice Committee and as a member of the PSJH Oregon Community Ministry Board. She maintains an active medical license, is a clinical associate professor of surgery at OHSU, and is courtesy medical staff at Providence Portland and Providence St. Vincent Medical Center. I mean, you've got a lot of titles, a lot of things going on there, Dr. Soot. I can imagine you have personal experience with stress as well. We're excited to have you with us.
Thank you. Pleasure to be here.
And next, I'd like to introduce Christine Sagat. As an active runner and cyclist, Christine never expected to face a heart attack in her 50s. Her story took a life-changing turn when she experienced a spontaneous coronary artery dissection, SCAD, heart attack, that occurs when a tear forms in a blood vessel in the heart. And she's been sharing her story because she wants to raise awareness of SCAD risk factors, and they really talk about the role stress management has played in her recovery. Well, Christine, we're really grateful to have you here today as well.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
Okay, so let's dive into our topic. I'll start with you, Dr. Soot. When we think about stress, why is it so important to pay attention to stress? Does it impact our health, and in what ways?
Yeah, stress is really interesting, and people think, well, this is something that's happening to me, something different, but really, this is something that from an evolutionary standpoint, when we look back at the body and how it was developed to deal with stress. The problem was it was developed to deal with acute stress. And so it's only within really the last 100 years or so that stress is something that we've taken on to be more of an emotional, so more of a mental than a physical stressor. And one of the great books that I always recommend to people is called Why Zebras Don't Get Ulcers. And it's by Robert Sapolsky. And it really there very well outlines in a humorous way, and for people who didn't major in biology and go to medical school, of why your heart rate starts racing, why you get sweaty, why you can't sleep at night. All of those things that really are on the long term not good for your body, why those have developed. And so, yes, it is for, if you're being chased after by a lion, he says, then that's good, but you want the lion to go away. And so it's how do we deal with stressors in our life that are not going away. So yeah, very important, and the body plays a huge role.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, I think about just the situations that we get stressed in, but that ongoing piece of it is really adds up over time. Christine, let's chat with you a little bit. We'd love to hear from you. And, obviously this is super personal for you, and you've seen impacts firsthand, not only of stress, but of heart disease overall. Why don't you tell us a little bit about your story and, why you're here today and what message you want to share with our virtual friends?
Yeah, thank you. So yeah, as you mentioned in my little intro there, I've always been very active throughout my entire life. I started running in my 20s and 30s and took up sprint triathlons in my 40s, and then really got hooked on the bike riding part of triathlons. So I started, switching over to that about 15 years ago. And each year I would always pick a big event that I would train for. So back in July of 2017, I was doing a 65-mile bike ride, training for a 200-mile ride in the August of that year. I felt great that morning. I had nothing that indicated anything was going to go wrong, except for when I hit that very first hill. And one of the first symptoms I did recognize was all four of my limbs, like both my arms, both my legs, all went numb. And then I did start getting some chest pain, which I just attributed to heartburn. I kept trying to sit up straighter on the bike, thinking it's going to go away. I'd had heartburn before. And I was 54. And in my mind, I think we have a great way of denying that any of this could ever happen to us. So, when I got home, I waited a few more hours. I ignored all my symptoms. I kept, putting it off. And after about 12 hours, I finally went to the hospital thinking, well, maybe I should get this checked out. They sent me immediately to the cath lab where they discovered that tear. It had formed that bubble, which had narrowed my artery and caused, some minor damage to my, I think it was the right lower chamber of my heart. So, but, they released me less than 24 hours later, and they didn't have a lot of information about SCAD at that time. They basically told me, you may never have another one for the rest of your life. You may have one next week. We just don't know. So not only was the heart attack, and wrapping my brain around the fact I just had one, very stressful, but not knowing how to prevent it in the future was very stressful for me. I felt like I was out on my own, and there was no one else I could really talk to, because SCAD's a very different type of heart disease than regular heart disease. And since then, I've learned that, SCAD is very rare, or uncommon, as they like to say now. It only causes about 1% of all heart attacks. It's mainly happening in women. About 80% of them are in women. And the average age is about 40 to 43. So, and about 30% of SCADs are in postpartum or pregnant women. So they don't know if there's a hormonal piece to this or what it is. So it's really quite rare, uncommon. There's not a lot of information out there. And it was very stressful, to say the least. Yeah. Definitely stressful.
Sounds like it, for sure. Mm-hmm. Well, I think about just the situation you were in, and then what you were sharing earlier, Dr. Fitzhugh. I like for you both to share some of the tips that you might have for helping to manage stress in the moment. Thinking about that situation of the lion chasing us, right? No, I think it's very rare for us to have an actual lion chasing us, but that managing stress in the moment, Dr. Kendi should consider to manage stress.
Yeah, there are definitely a couple of things you can do. One of the things to realize is when you're stressed, the reason that your heart rate's going up and your blood pressure is going up is it's what we call that fight or flight response. And so in that, the problem with the stress is the cortisol levels stay very high for long periods of time when you have chronic stress. And there's some really good information now about those cortisol levels, which is causing increased inflammation, increased blood clotting factors. So all of these things that we know that lead to heart disease and stroke. So how do you decrease your cortisol levels? And that's really what we're getting at for the body, because if you can decrease those levels, then that is the counteracts the effects of the stress. So one of the things I love to say is it truly is just getting out of that situation that you're in right now. There's big, deep breaths and going for a walk. We're so blessed and so fortunate to be in the Pacific Northwest, and really good literature out right now that 20 minutes in nature can really significantly decrease your cortisol level, so decrease your stress. So that's why they say get up and walk, get up and exercise. It's the body's way of relieving those stress hormones that are being created now usually not because of physical stress, that because of psychological stress or situational stress. So that's the reason behind the get up and walk and exercise. Good for your body, good for your heart, good for your soul.
Sorry, I was having a little internet connection issues, but so I that part about getting up and walking, and to me, that really resonates with me personally, that getting outside for me makes a big difference. I missed my morning walk this morning, so I'm not feeling quite as perky as I might have otherwise, right? So I think that's great advice. And Christine, how about for you? I mean, obviously you were exercising quite a bit, even when you had your event. But what are things that you do to manage stress in your life?
Yeah, I was exercising. I still like to get out and walk every day, listen to podcasts. I really like to connect with people, surround myself with people that are, feed my soul, make me laugh, not so negative people. I think the first thing I learned to do was actually recognize when I was feeling stressed, because I think I ignored that quite a bit, recognizing those physical symptoms that my body was giving off. Is my mind thinking negative thoughts? Am I clenching my fist? Holding my breath? Am I reaching for that cookie jar again? And once I started to recognize those initial reactions to stress, I kind of stop now and take a deep breath. Sometimes walking away from a situation, revisiting it later helps. I try to I use an acronym called HALT. Am I hungry? Am I angry? Am I lonely? Am I tired? I usually find one of those four is often connected with my stress reaction. And that took me years to recognize that, my stress levels were connected to my emotions, and then how to recognize them in the moment. I also learned another technique I call the 10-10-10 rule. So if I'm stressed about something and it's bothering me today, I pause and think, okay, is this going to matter in 10 minutes, 10 months, or 10 years? So really putting things into perspective helps to kind of ground me in the moment, often relieves my stress at that time and diffuses it. So it's, if it doesn't help to go away, at least it makes it manageable. So those are kind of some of the techniques, along with I'm continuing to exercise, bike ride, diet, watching what I eat. But I think really key is recognizing when I'm feeling stressed, and then implementing some of those tools to offset that stress.
Thanks for sharing that. I love that you put an acronym to it, but it sounds like it took a while to discover what those triggers were, but understanding what they are is really important. So those are some great tips, I think, for managing that stress in the moment. It's also great to get ahead of it and prevent stress from really getting to us in the first place. So let's talk a little bit about that piece of things. What kind of strategies you both might have around preventing stress. Christine, anything from your side that you want to start with?
Yeah, I think similar to what Dr. Soot mentioned earlier, for me, walking every day, listening to those podcasts, things that I find enjoyable. I think one of the biggest pieces for me was, as a mom, as I'm sure many people are, we're bombarded and we've got a full calendar all day long. And particularly with moms or women, we tend to look after ourselves or forget to look after ourselves first. We put everyone else first. And so really making a point of allowing myself that 10, 15, 20 minutes, half an hour of something that is just for me, whether it's reading, riding my bike, gardening, doing a puzzle, or that walk in the morning. And then I put it on my calendar, because that way I won't, I don't want to let myself down. So if it's on my calendar, I write it down, I'm committed to it. So that's really helped. And I think, again, like I said, we tend to, put everyone else first. Sleep is a really important thing for me as well. Making sure I get a good night's sleep, and along with that, exercise and that diet. I like to think about the flight attendant's mantra, put your own mask on first before you help others. That's really been a big key factor for me in managing stress and helping to prevent it down the road. And I hope I'm modeling for my kids, that mental health, nurturing your mental health, nurturing your physical health, it's all really important. And that hopefully they can learn that lesson a little earlier than I did. But those are just some of my techniques, to help me prevent it down the road. It's going to happen every day, but learning how to deal with it and manage it is the new journey that I'm still learning as I go forward.
Yeah, that's always a journey for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it's great. But I mean, I love while Dr. Suk kind of shares her thoughts on this same topic. I'd love for our audience too to drop into the chat. I think the chat's working again now. Ways that you guys manage stress. What tips and tricks do you have that you can share? And while we're looking for those, Dr. Suk, I'd love to hear from you. What do you think about that prevention stress and strategies around that?
I mean, Christine is just such a wonderful example of all those things that you mentioned. And one of the big things that Christine mentioned truly is that ability to schedule and take care of yourself. And we've all heard it. But I think for women who often fall into that caregiver role of children, they may have aging parents. You're in that sort of sandwich generation of trying to help. You put yourself last. And that's where you're going to get the undiagnosed hypertension, the diabetes, you think it's just a migraine or a stress headache, but maybe your blood pressure is markedly elevated. So all of these things, and to Christine's point of, she didn't think she could be having a heart attack. That's one of the things we hear with women the most, is they really didn't think about heart disease or hypertension or stroke. They just thought it was quote unquote stress, which it is because it's being exacerbated. But so really going to your doctor, the preventative visit, the cancer screening, caring for yourself so that you can care for others is critically important. Sleep, again, why do I need sleep? It helps decrease your cortisol levels. So it all goes back to these very basic fight or flight, and you've got to get your body into that ability to relax and to truly have that, what we call the parasympathetic system, be turned on. Because if you're always on chronic overdrive, that's the leading to stress. And so all of these tips have been absolutely fantastic, and that's really where you need to be taking that next step of how do you give yourself a break so that you can give your body physiologically a break. So I love all Christine. So take care of yourself.
Yeah, thanks. Well, this is a question just for either one of you, and thinking about that acronym that you shared, HALT, Christine. I was just thinking about that. You said it took you years to discover what those triggers were, but I wonder if either one of you have just ideas of how people can find what those triggers are. Like, what are the mechanisms to understand what our bodies are reacting to and how to manage them better? Like, how did you figure it out, Christine?
Trial and error. And unfortunately, I had to have a heart attack to really bring it to the forefront and pay attention to it. So, I think intuitively we're all we can be very aware of what's going on in our body. But I think, as we were talking earlier, as moms, as women, we are typically raised to be those caregivers, and we push all of that aside. So it's not that I wasn't aware of what was going on. I think I just fell into that trap of, I'll just look after everyone else because that's my job. So, I did hear a great saying right after my heart attack, that if you don't take care of your health today, then you're going to be forced to take care of your illness tomorrow. And that was a game changer for me. We don't get a do-over in this life. This is it. So, you really do need to stop and think, when you start to recognize that the stress is overwhelming you, it's okay to take that time for yourself. It's actually imperative that you do, because it could be a game changer for you as well. I am ever so grateful I'm here. I am lucky to be here today. There are a lot of people that I've heard have had the SCAD that did not make it. So I'm very grateful, and really do pay attention now to those, what I used to think were just minor stresses. And then I've learned a lot too through my health about how cortisol impacts you, and how if you're at that high level all the time, that's not healthy for your body. I was starting to get a little high blood pressure. I ignored it. So I pay attention to those now for sure.
Thanks. Dr. Say, anything else to add before we shift to our next topic?
Yeah, I do. I do have to say that when you think about stress or anxiety, and the two are kind of put together, I read something that really resonated with me as well. They said anxiety and stress are rarely about what's happening in the present moment. It's past experiences that you've had and you're worried about the future based on past experiences. And I said, yes, except, and I'm going to make everybody laugh, when you're driving with your child, when they're learning how to drive. I was like, that was stress in the present moment. Yeah, it usually isn't. So when you say, how do you identify these factors? How do you identify where you're stressed so that you can you can release it? It's really finding those times when you are thinking about future events, and that's your concern. And if you can bring yourself to the present moment, and that is why mindfulness and the discussions about being gratitude, mindfulness, being in the present moment, yoga, all of those things truly are stress relievers because they are taking you right to right now. It's not about the future and what's going to happen, maybe not happen, or you want to have happen. What is happening right now? And if you can truly get yourself in that present moment, that's what all of these stress reduction is really getting at. That's the core and the root to it. So just enjoy where you are right now.
Well, thank you, Dr. Sit and Christine, for all the insights you provided. And you know what? You just set us up perfectly for our next little piece we want to do today. And we're here able to give you all a gift of a little mindfulness exercise and finding ways to mitigate stress a little bit in a few minutes here. So today we're going to get us started. We have Megan Meister with us. She's a certified yoga instructor and a member of our team here at the American Heart Association. We're very fortunate to have her with us. She often walks us through yoga and mindfulness exercises too as a team. And so she's going to share a tool that we can use today in the webinar. I hope you all will follow along with us. Take 5 minutes to reduce your stress and reflect on your day. And I'll turn it over to Megan to lead us through that.
Thanks, Cherish. So I'm going to invite everybody to find a comfortable seat. If you can, feet on the ground so the ground can support you. You can even move some fleshy goodness out from underneath. So again, your seat can support you. And then roll your shoulders up, down your back. If you need a little bit more energy, palms flipped up. If you need more grounded energy, palms down. And then soften the windows of your eyes closed or find one fixed point of focus, just so you can turn inward. We'll breathe together like we're all in this room together, but really settle in, because that's the one thing I think sometimes we forget about. We don't need any special equipment, a special pillow. We don't need an hour to really be able to reset. All we need is to take that pause to reflect for whatever we need. So I'm going to read you this little thing that is inspiring me right now. So calm water. Each of us is like the waves and also like the water. Sometimes we're excited, noisy, agitated like the waves. Sometimes we're tranquil, like still water. When water is calm, it reflects the blue skies, the clouds, and the trees. Sometimes whether we're at home, work, or school, we become tired, agitated, or unhappy, and we need to transform into calm water. We already have calmness in us. We just need to know how to manifest it. So as you sit in your comfortable seat, whatever that might look like, breathe and inhale. And exhale, sigh it all out. Let something go that doesn't serve you. Smooth, steady breath in. Smooth, steady breath out. One more just like that. As you feel everything expand and open, breathe in. Exhale, gently release out. And then if your eyes are closed, flutter them open. Now we're going to do some seated cat-cow. So again, you could do this in any seat, right? If you're on a call, even if you're in the office, palms flip down towards your knees. They could touch your knees or you're more on your thighs. I'm going to flip to the side just so you can see a little bit of what my back's doing. So inhale, cow pose. So arch your back, gaze up. You can use your palms to press into your body just so you feel that articulation. Heel your shoulders to your back. Exhale, cat, curve and round. Draw your navel to your spine, your chin to your spine, chin to your chest. And then inhale, cow pose. No worries if your neck doesn't come along, that your eyes are just there. Really just enjoy the movement. Exhale, cat, curve and round. Right, your body's different every single moment. Inhale, lift up. And sometimes we have to meet our body where we are. Exhale, cat, curve and round. And then pull your heart through center. And then we're going to do some side body stretches. So bring your right palm to your right leg. Left arm stretches up. Breathe in. Exhale, up and over towards the right. Now your gaze, wherever you want it to go, it could go down, straight ahead, even up. You could play around with that too. Where do you need that stretch in your neck? Peel your left shoulder down. Feel that openness slowly start to materialize in your rib cage. Inhale all the way back up. Bring your right arm back. Meet your left. And then bring your left palm to your left thigh, up and over, side body stretch. Broaden through your chest. Your right shoulder might need to pull back to help you drop down. And again, where does your gaze want to go? Breathe in. Gently breathe out. Let's do that breath to movement. Inhale, back up, almost like a mountain pose, arms. Exhale, side body. Right palm, right leg, left arm expands. Inhale, lift back up. Exhale to the left. Enjoy that stretch, right? Then come back through center. Bring your right palm to your right leg. We're going to get into some twists of our spine. So left palm towards your right leg. Your right palm can come to your seat, or if you have a back to your chair, that feels good. Breath in, pull your navel to your spine. Exhale, twist and rotate. Now, no worries about how big or how small your twist is, right? It's unique and amazing all for you, and that's what matters. Breath in and breath out. Feel your heart back through center. And then let's take the other side. Right palm towards your left leg. Again, wherever it feels comfortable for your left palm to be. Inhale, pull your heart, your belly in. Exhale, twist. And maybe the side's bigger or smaller. Again, none of that matters. All that matters is the pull back through center. Come back in. Right? Maybe you feel the ground beneath you support you than you did 5 minutes ago. And that's really all it takes. Chairs, thank you so much for letting me join and bring a little bit of movement. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you so much, Megan. That's a great example of how to reset. And I feel a little recharged myself. And thank you to Christine and Dr. Sid for all the insight you provided today. It's been fun having this conversation. And I know you've given us all a lot of things to think on. So we touched on a lot of important topics. We want to make sure to leave you with additional resources. So in the chat, you'll find some links to some information, and we are happy to have you visit those. And if there are any questions that we find later in the Q&A or the chat, we'll also include that in a follow-up email with the links. A huge thank you to Providence Health Plan for sponsoring this event. And thank you to all of you for listening with open ears and being part of the conversation today. When you exit out of Zoom, you will see a pop-up that takes you to a short survey. We'd love it if you could fill out that survey. It's about 1 minute. That provides some feedback about today's event and any ideas you'd like us to think about for the future.